And it, oh, okay. Something just came up on the screen that threw me a minute. Okay. Oh, no.
It's fine. So I've just got to record the session for other parents. So apologies.
Okay, Rachel. I think I've messed up the presentation bit now. But,
it's fine. If you just go back to slideshow resume. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's
do that. That's perfect.
Oh, is it come up all right? Because it hasn't on my screen. So
if you click, there should be a drop down.
And from the beginning, that's it. Perfect. I've got it. Okay. Steve's talk was very much about the technical side, and it was demonstrating how they were going to be able, by using the hub, to deal with annual reviews much quicker. My presentation is much more about the nitty-gritty of the annual reviews, what's expected, what happens, and the whole process. So, okay, I'll make a start. This is what I'm going to be covering, what's an annual review, about the emergency reviews, just really everything to do with annual reviews, including preparing for adulthood as well. Let's work our way through it. So if a child has an EHCP plan, it must be reviewed at least once a year by the local authority. And it's a process. I think a lot of us tend to think the annual review is a meeting, but actually that's just part of the process, and a very important part, but it is just part of the process. And the other important thing to remember is the review must focus on the child or young person's progress towards achieving their outcomes specified in the Education, Health and Care Plan, and whether they remain appropriate. Occasionally, that's not so occasionally nowadays, an early or emergency annual review has to be called. So this is something that's a little bit out of sync from the usual one-a-year process, and it can be called if perhaps a young person's going through a really difficult time and at the last annual review, and they say, well, let's have an early annual review so that we can just check we're back on track and just check everything is okay. Or the school identifies that the pupil is a serious risk of exclusion. So, you know, if it's really going terribly wrong and there is a chance of an exclusion, they should call an annual review. Okay. Maybe the young person's needs have changed and the placement is risk of breaking down. Or maybe the parent says, actually, I just don't think you can meet my child's needs. I want to look at a different provision. I found this school that I really like. Well, the annual review is the process that you go through. Okay. And if a child's needs have changed, again, that would, you know, sort of start an early review. Okay.
Hey there, Sue.
Yeah, so at least, so the process is the local authority has to tell the school who needs an annual review, and they do that at the start of each term. Okay, they're also supposed to tell any social care workers or health workers as well. The annual review is in 4 parts. So it's a collection and sharing of information. It's the annual review meeting, and I will talk about that in more detail. From that meeting, it's the report. They call it the head teacher's report, but more often than not, it's actually the SENCO's report of the meeting. And then the local authority to review the paperwork and make a decision about the annual review. Okay. So there is a whole sort of different slides at different points in which the annual review. So the first review should always be 12 months from the date that the plan was issued. The numbers in brackets at the back refer to the code of practice, the SEN code of practice. And yes, I think mainly reviews are done every 12 months. Okay. Now, interestingly, if an annual review has been amended, so perhaps you've gone to tribunal and the tribunal has changed the plan quite a lot, you don't then count that as another 12 months on from there. You go to when the original 12 months is due. Okay, so a plan might be finalised in January, but the review is due in May, and it is that May date that you'll stick to. And obviously children aged up to 5, generally it's thought to review more regularly, every 3 to 6 months. Who must be invited to the review? Well, obviously parents and carers. The young person or the child should be invited to the review too. It's interesting because I've been to many annual reviews and there's no sign of the child or the young person for that matter. I really encourage parents to let it, certainly a older child or young person, to come to the meeting, because it is about them, and it's really important that they understand all these people that are making decisions for them. There should be a representative from the school. That can be the SENCO, that can be a class teacher. It's usually a SENCO and a class teacher, not just a class teacher. The SEN officer should be invited. They don't go to that many annual reviews. I guess if they went to them all, they wouldn't do any other work at all. But they do tend to go when there is a problem. Perhaps if a school is saying, we can't meet this child's needs, they will tend to go to the annual review. If it's appropriate, a health service representative, and if appropriate, a social care representative, and other people that may be involved. It could be a youth offending team, a careers advisor, somebody along those lines. Oops. Right, so collecting the information. So the head teacher or the SENCO collects the contributions, and the contributions should be from parents, from the young person, from their teachers, and others invited to the review meeting. And it says there, this is circulated at least 2 weeks prior to the annual review meeting. I think mostly that does happen. But what I will say to you as parents, sometimes getting your report done is a bit tricky and you leave it to the last minute. Well, that doesn't matter. If you've done a report, take it along to the annual review because it can easily be added in. You don't have to get it all done by the 2 weeks before.
Sue, can I just ask a question that might be relevant to other parent carers? When we're looking for input, would it be fair to say that we can get that from other multi-agencies? So say, for example, if an OT is involved or a speech and language therapist, that we would actually look to solicit ourselves a report and an input on how a child's progressing?
If the OT, say it's an OT, if the OT is working with the young person.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, then the school, when they send out the invitation, should say, can we have an update report? It shouldn't be something that you have to do.
Okay. But if it's not there, then obviously we know to signpost the school to get that information.
Absolutely. And it's ideal if they can come to the meeting as well, but if not, they at least to do a report. So I think anybody who's working with the child should submit a report.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, some I know with my own child's plan was that, and some other people have done this, is where that you can look to actually get provision in the plan for them to be part of the review. So actually there's time allocated from the OT, speech and language therapist, to actually do a detailed report. So that's something to think about potentially for future annual reviews, is that you want that detailed input, get it in section F, or would be a suggestion.
Absolutely, that's obviously within the plan. If SALT, speech and language therapy, is in section F, then they should do a report. And you know, because if you are a bit concerned about it, maybe chase the SENCO up as soon as you know when the plan's going to be. Just remind them gently that it needs to be done. Okay,
thanks, Sue. I'll let you carry on. Thank you.
Okay. Parents' contributions, when EHCPs first were invented as such, when we came to the annual review, the schools often ask parents to do another Our Story, which is like a sledgehammer to break a nut, really. It's ridiculous. So your parents' views are really, really important, and also the young person's views, young person's views are very important. You obviously have to be provided with information and support to help your participation. And I guess that's where perhaps an organisation like SENDIASS comes into their own, because we can help you to write your reports. We can help you to talk through the sort of things that you want to mention. And the whole thing is to help the young person achieve the best possible education and other outcomes, and helping them to prepare for adulthood. Okay. So what do you include? You can add new reports. So if your child has seen a professional, perhaps an OT recently, and there's a new report, you can add that into the annual review for information. What you're thinking about when you're doing your report is thinking about what's working, what's not working, what are the future aspirations for your child, and do you need a change of placement? You also have the right at that point to request a personal budget. And if anybody's got any questions about personal budgets, let's sort of deal with that a little bit later. I don't want to go on about it if it's not needed. Okay. So at the meeting, and one of the things that Steve Devlin was saying, although the annual reviews are going to be a lot more IT-led, the meeting isn't. The meeting will continue. The meeting will always happen. Okay. So the SENCO, I have to say, usually chairs the meeting. And with all the information that's been gathered, they have to consider the pupils' views. So if a pupil has written their views, they should consider it. They should think about it. They are very important. The parents' views as well. The overall progress in the last year. So they've had maybe some interventions, and then we need to look at how those interventions have supported that child and how they've made progress. And obviously the plan is covered in outcomes, and it's how they've actually worked towards getting to those outcomes, and whether those outcomes need to be changed. If they've all been met, do they need to be changed, or do they need to continue? I think I've just jumped ahead there. Okay. We also look at the pupil attainment levels and the standard test results, and any changes in the pupil's circumstances, their needs or requirements for access aids or equipment aids and access. Okay, so any differences that have happened in the last year should be discussed. At the end of the meeting, there are recommendations, and they have to be recorded. So should the plan continue? Does the placement continue to meet need, or should they be looking at another placement? And so all of these things are discussed and recorded. And the other thing that's really interesting is if the school say, oh, yes, we can meet need, but the parent is saying, I don't think you can meet need, then those differing opinions should also be recorded, and maybe reasons why as well. Okay. The local authority, once they've received the report, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead again. So the recommendations are to maintain the plan, amend the plan, cease the plan, carry out a full statutory assessment, or move from a specialist provision. I think that should be. Okay. So yes, so those are the recommendations, and they can differ. If parents think differently from school, that should still be recorded. So after the meeting, the educational setting has to prepare the written report. So they've done an outline usually before the meeting. And so all the other things that have been discussed go into the report, and they have to send it to the local authority within 2 weeks. Everybody should receive a copy. And certainly for parents, I will always say, check it before it's sent to the local authority. Now, the local authority will review the plan in the light of the report and will decide either to maintain it, to amend it, to cease it, or to start a new assessment. Okay. They are supposed to do that within 4 weeks of getting the report from the school. It's not been working that way very well lately. There are a lot more, yes, they're much later, but it should be 4 weeks, and that's what we've got to work towards.
So can I just ask a question, just to,
yes,
from a Hampshire lens, when I know you speak to lots of parents,
yeah.
What would you say the average, from your perspective, time is for annual reviews to be formalised? So what generally, what's the sense at the moment? We know it's not 4 weeks, but
no, that's a very difficult question actually, because we tend to see the worst scenarios.
Yeah.
The very worst scenario was a parent had 2 annual reviews and never had any decision at all. That's dreadful. That's really dreadful. I would say averagely 6 months.
Okay.
And what I say to parents is, if that decision's important, so they're not agreeing with something that the school is saying one thing and they're saying another, then to nag, it's not the right word really, but to keep on to the local authority to say, look, I need this decision, because the decision letter, as we can see here, is very important and will give you the right to appeal if you disagree.
Okay, thank you. One question I've got that's from one of our attendees.
Yes.
It's a question around a child being in the current setting. So I'll ask the questions. It says, does your child have to meet crisis point, i.e. school refusal, before a new provision is sought? My son is hanging on by a thread, but they don't see the behaviours and I'm worried about his long-term well-being. I guess we would probably need to understand whether an EHCP is in place there or not.
Yes.
Yes. From an annual review context, what could you say to this parent?
So I would say to this parent, if you are at all worried and in school aren't really acknowledging it, you need to ask for an early annual review so that it can be discussed with everybody and you can record your thoughts that you don't think the school can meet your child's needs.
Yeah, and this child does have an EHCP, they've just confirmed. So
right, okay, yes. So
would that be an emergency review if they're kind of away from their deadline?
You say to the school, I would like an early annual review because I don't think my son is coping in this setting at the moment, and I want to review it, and I would like SEN to be there as well. Okay, so SEN are always invited, but it's because they're seeing a problem and school maybe not seeing the problem. It's important that they have an annual review and that they get their point of view across. It might equally be really important for the child to be able to say what's good or bad about school. And obviously in a normal annual review, the school tend to gather the child's views. But I've just helped a parent who felt that the child wouldn't really say what they really thought to school.
It's really common, isn't it? That's a common thing.
So that is something that we can do at SENDIASS. We can offer to sort of, as we're not part of school and we're not part of family, to gather their views separately. And I've done quite a few of them. But I was speaking to a mum last week and her son's autistic. And he says, why would I want to speak to somebody I've never even met? I'd stress that it was really important to mum to get his views. Anyway, she's done it, or he's done it. I think Sue said it's really important, and he's done the most amazing views. It's a really difficult situation, and his views are just so clever what he's done, and I think that will really go a long way to making some changes.
Definitely, and I've heard from other parent care some really creative ways of getting the child and young person's voice. So it could be a poster, it could be a video, it could be basically from somebody that's a trusted adult, or it could be from one of the therapists. It could be if you've got a therapist working with your child, or somebody that's known to asking questions in a very non sort of direct way. So there's some creative ways of getting their input. Thank you for that. I hope that's answered your question to the parent that raised that. If not, just put some more follow up in the chat. Sorry, another parent has asked.
That's okay.
Do parents see the progress report that the school prepared before the meeting? So I know that we see the output, or you mentioned, Sue, that we see the output before it goes to the local authority. Are parents able to see the progress report in advance of the face-to-face meeting?
They should be, and there was that slide bit further back saying 2 weeks before.
Okay, fantastic.
If school haven't done it 2 weeks before, if you turn up at the annual review and there is the report that they've done so far, ask for some time to actually read through that report properly, because it will have in there the child's progress.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to ask
Ideally,
okay,
they should send it.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to allow you to move on, but I will try and get to your questions, everybody. What I'll say is if we run out of time, Sue has very kindly agreed that we'll collate the questions. Obviously, we want to get through the content. That's what you're here for as well.
No, we're doing well. We're doing well, and I quickly. So.
So one last question then before we carry on with the slides. My question is, what if my son goes to school in another local authority? Which local authority will decide the EHCP being continued? Very good question.
It's where you live. So if you live in Hampshire, it's Hampshire. Okay. And if you needed an SEN officer to go to the annual review, they will travel across borders. They don't like you.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
Okay. So it's whoever you pay your council tax to is the bottom line. So if you're paying your council tax to Hampshire, then it's Hampshire's responsibility.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll let you carry on, Sue. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the local authority, when they've made their decision, and we like to think it's going to be within 4 weeks, but it isn't really at the moment, they should write to you. And if you disagree with the decision, you can appeal to the tribunal service. So if they've written and said, well, yes, we understand you wanted a change of placement, but we think your child's needs can be met at this particular school, and you think, no, it's just not working out, you obviously can go to appeal. Talk to us. We'll sort of talk you through the process, help you with the form filling if you need help with the form filling, and sort of work with you through the process as well. But after an annual review, you have the right of appeal to challenge any decision that a local authority has made. Okay. You can then see why, if the local authority aren't making the decision and sending you the decision letter, you're in limbo and you can't appeal. So it's very important to get that decision letter. And if you have to nag and send them millions of emails to do it, do it, because if you want to challenge what you think the decision is going to be, it needs to be done. Okay, so moving on, transferring between the different phases of education. So in the early years, infants to juniors, juniors to secondary, the decision should be made by the 15th of February. Okay, so you should know exactly where your child is going to go to school in February. And if you're not happy, then obviously you have the right of appeal and you can challenge it. Sadly, this year, more than any other year, I think, not so much with primary, but with secondary, we've got a lot of youngsters who have no idea where they're going to go to school in September. It's partly because they may need a special school and all the special schools are full. So the local authority have named a mainstream school. And so parents can challenge that. We were completely shocked by the number of appeals we started. I'm glad to say quite a few of them have been resolved and places have been found. But this year, it's really not been good in terms, there are still children out there that don't know where they're going to go to school in September. Post-16 and post-16 to post-16, I like that. So if you're going from one college to another college, the 31st of March, or at least 5 months before the start of the course. Okay. So preparing for adulthood, or PFA as they've put there, and better life outcomes. So if the young person has a plan and they're in year 9, we then start to think about their future. What's going to happen to them in the future? And year 9 might feel a bit early sometimes, but it's good to start thinking about it. So the better outcomes are good health, employment, independent living and housing, and then friends and relationships and being in a community. So I like this: tips: start early, high aspirations and appropriate language. I think start early is right. And some young people, they have these great ideas about what they want to do. As a parent, you might think, oh gosh, they're never going to be able to do that. But that shouldn't, you encourage and you help them, and they have to think about that. I mean, I hope every young person with an EHCP from year 9, 10, 11 will see a careers advisor and be able to talk through their options and talk through what they might or might not do. Moving on to college is, if they're going to go to college, it can be such a change for them and for the good, because they're studying things that they really want to study. And, you know, by thinking about where all these qualifications or the study or the work that they're doing is going to take them is good to start early. Okay, has anybody got any questions about that at all? No? Okay. So it's, as I say, it's from year 9, and it should include a focus on preparing for adulthood. It doesn't matter if a youngster doesn't know what they want to do. They might say, well, I think I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to get a job. You know, that's the sort of thing that we record. And it should include effective planning from children to move from children's to adult care and adult health services. So I'm not saying that's going to happen at year 9, because it's not until they're 18, but as they progress through, that should be a consideration. The young person's views are really, really important. What are they good at? What are their interests? What do they see in their future? The really important bit. And they have to consider choosing options and choices for the next phase of education. So I guess that's why it was brought in at year 9 originally, because they're choosing GCSE programs in year 10 and 11, although many schools now operate that from year 8. So they're choosing from year 8. I used to be a careers advisor, so I sort of used to do an awful lot of work with children in year 9. And really and truly, because the government say they have to do English, maths and science, the basics are covered. They can't opt out of those, unfortunately. They have to do them. And other things they choose, well, it will make a huge difference to whatever they want to do at college. Okay, so, you know, if your school offers media studies, well, they don't have to do media studies to then go on and study media at college, whatever. But it's just really getting them to be involved and to be thinking about their future. Okay. So who we are. Okay, so we stand for Special Education Needs Disability Information, Advice and Support Service. And we can provide support to parents and young people with annual reviews in lots of ways. So we can explain the process to you. And also talk about possible outcomes. We can help you with your parental contribution to the annual review. That can be actually sitting down and working through it with you. Or equally, if you prepared something and then wanted to send it to us for some feedback before sending it to school, that's absolutely fine. And if it doesn't make sense to us, then we will question it. But more often than not, we say, wow, that's amazing, well done. So yeah, we just, you know, give you some feedback. We can help you prepare for the review meeting. It can be quite intimidating going into school when you know the head teacher, the SENCO, the class teacher, and maybe somebody from occupational therapy, or, you know, and just you. It can be feel very daunting, but we can certainly help you prepare for the meeting and make sure that you're able to get your views across. For some parents, they like us to attend the meeting with them. And in fact, I'm doing one this afternoon for a parent who gets very anxious about annual reviews. I anticipate I shall say very much, but I will be listening. And afterwards, I know she'll go into complete panic. And so I'll be saying, well, it's okay. They talked about this, they talked about that. So it's, you know, it's just being there alongside people. And if needed, we can go through the annual review report afterwards, and again, if needed, help you with the appeal, if that's the way you've got to go.
Sue, can we ask a quick question, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I think the answer to this question is yes, but you're the expert. So it was from the parent asked about the different county, sort of moving from county. They have asked, will they still assess whether or not to continue the HCP? So when they're assessing whether to continue with it as part of annual review, are they expected to provide provisions within the school? So are they still providing those provisions? I think the answer is yes, but
yes, because it's whichever local authority they have the duty to provide all of those things. So as I say, going back to that again, if you're from Hampshire, if you live in Hampshire, but your child is going to a school in Wiltshire or West Sussex, something like that, then yes, Hampshire still they have to meet that education, health and care plan and have to provide what's needed.
And so do they provide that provision then until such time you have the new document that's been agreed? I think that might be where the question is coming from. Right. So for example, let's say the local authority, and I'm kind of adding to this parent's question. Say for example, the local authority have taken a very, very long time to finalise the plan as part of annual review. This parent wants to know that whilst all that's happening, will the child still receive the provision?
Yes.
In that setting.
Because what they're doing from an annual review is making a decision. And when that decision isn't there, then everything carries on as
it's business as usual.
And it's the decision that makes the difference. So if in their decision they said, oh, we're going to amend the plan, okay, even then that doesn't happen instantly. So if they say we're going to amend the plan, and then there will be lots of discussions about how and the evidence, how the plan's going to be amended. So it will carry on as usual until there is
Thank you. I hope that reassures the parent that asked that.
Okay.
One more question, and before we move on, this parent would like to ask, how concerned should I be if my son is at a specialist placement on a draft EHCP? So it sounds like they're in a specialist setting, and so that draft EHCP has been from February 2020. So just before COVID. Still haven't got a final EHCP.
You haven't had an annual review.
No. School are wanting and this is the final bit that makes me shudder. School are wanting to wait until they've been able to settle the child and get some assessments in place. What would your high level advice be? Obviously, I know we can't go into individual cases, but
no, that is really tricky. It sounds like the child has got an assessment place, because normally you can't go into a special school unless you have a final plan and it's named on that plan. So it sounds like there is an assessment place. I would have thought if it was all a draft plan was done by February 2020, the assessments should have been done and it should have been finalised. And I'm not quite sure why it isn't. And I think the local authority needs to be challenged. But it also sounds like the special school are saying, well, actually, we need to help him settle. We need some more assessments. It's almost like they're having a reassessment without having the final plan. It isn't right. And I would say to the parent maybe to contact us in SENDIASS, and we'll try and unpick it for you in more detail. And that, that shouldn't have happened. You should have had a final plan naming the school because he's there. And then you would have had an annual review February this year, and if there are problems or reassessments needed, they would have been discussed at the annual review.
Thank you, Sue. That makes sense.
Very unsettling, but do contact us.
Thank you. Hopefully that's helped answer your question to the parent that raised that. I guess some of the narrative might be from the local authority or the school is, COVID has meant we haven't been able to do the assessments. My understanding, but Sue, if you can give us the official line on this, is that it should be business as usual now in terms of children having assessments, whether that be Ed Sykes, etc. Is that true? Yes. That actually there should be no delays now in assessments?
No, shouldn't be. And maybe that is the reason why it hasn't been finalised, because things weren't able to be completed properly. But if they've gone as far as drafting a plan, then that indicates that the assessments had been done. But, we need to that one a little bit more.
Thanks, Sue. Do you want to carry on, and I'll keep checking the chat?
Of course. Okay. So yes, so I was just saying what we can do and how we can help. We in SENDIASS, we have all done some kind of legal training. it's called IPSIA training, and don't ask me, it's independent parental education, something or other. Okay, but they are very legally biased. They've got a lot of trainee barristers and people that volunteer with them, and so they're very focused on the law rather than local practice. And we all have had to do training, so we've all done level 3 and passed it. And in fact, we have a team of volunteers as well, probably about 8 volunteers, and several of them have also done the training. They don't have to, they have to do level 1, but they've actually gone on to do level 3 because they're just like that. They're just amazing. So there's 11 of us in total, but many of us are part-time. Okay, I think in total there's about 7 people, but we do have our volunteers as well. And so give us plenty of notice. We will help you at the review if you're worried about it. Okay, we also help with loads of other things, I think, as I have indicated, and you know, are busy, but we do really try and support people. Okay. All right, so we've got a timeline here for annual reviews. So reports should be circulated, it says, 2 weeks before the meetings. That was a question earlier. Should we see them? Yes, you should. An invitation should be sent out 2 weeks before. Oh, yeah.
Hi there. I've got a really good question here, and sorry to the parent that's probably been waiting for me to ask it. So this parent, bless their heart, has 2 annual reviews tomorrow. 2, I double bubble. They have received reports from the professionals, but nothing from school. And the meeting is via Teams. What should they do? Yeah,
I think they need to speak to school and get those the school's elements to them. So they've got professionals there, but you know, I mean, it's different if you're going into an annual review face to face, and there is the paperwork on the desk, and you can say, give me 10-15 minutes to go through this before the meeting starts. That's fine. But virtually, you know, they need to send it to you. They really do. And having 2 is, woo, that's tough going. It's a shame they're both on the same day. Yeah, the school should send you their paperwork. You should have sight of it before the meeting.
That parent, I know we spoke many months ago, that's asked this, and you had 2 separate case officers for one family. Have you managed to get 1 case officer? You have, brilliant, that's good. So yeah. Would it be fair, Sue, would it be reasonable if the school haven't sent those reports in enough time to be able to actually look and comment, you know, make informed comments about it? Would it be fair for a parent carer to actually delay that meeting for them to send that information across? I
think so. I mean, if it's a type of meeting where things are going well and, you know, they're happy with the school and the child is happy at the school, then you sort of get how it's going to go. But if it's a bit contentious, if there are issues and you're thinking that the school is not meeting your child's needs, then I think you have every right to say, can we make the date later?
Okay, thank you. I hope that's answered that parent's question. Obviously, put anything in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. So I think these are all things that we've said. The school should send the report to the local authority within 2 weeks. What Steve Devlin was saying, because they're going to use the hub, the SENCO could submit the report sort of 24 hours, 48 hours after the meeting, which then, you know, sort of makes them, enables them to work quicker. The local authority are supposed to make a decision within 4 weeks of receiving it. Okay. If the plan needs to be amended, so if there are changes, they need to start the process without delay. And let's have a look at this one. Within 4 weeks after the date of the review meeting and within 12 months the date of issue of the AHC plan or previous views, you get a draft and you have 15 days to consider it. Okay. And the final amendments agreed 8 weeks from the amendment notice.
Fantastic. Just a question on the hub. You mentioned the hub. We've got a question here. Any tips on where the HCP is not on the hub, so still in the paper format? We cannot upload new information for the review and depend on the caseworker to respond, which is currently very delayed. So it sounds like there's not much parental review
Right.
for the data going into that review. Any recommendations or tips?
Can I just clarify? So is it the parents' views, rather than sending it to the caseworker, send it to the school if there is a school?
So it sounds as though this EHCP is not currently held on the hub. It sounds like it's pre-hub.
Right. Okay. Then I think don't even worry about the hub. Just do, so if there's an annual review coming up, do your parent contribution, send it to school. Will include it in the report. The report will be sent to SEN, and SEN will have to respond within 4 weeks.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, and there are lots of EHCPs that are not on the hub, and Steve said they're going to have a huge operation to get everybody's details onto the hub, but it's not yet a while. So
okay, thanks, Sue.
Don't worry about it for the moment. Okay.
Just keep emailing them until they respond.
Absolutely. Thank
you.
Okay. Yes. When we were support for SEND, we were based in Winchester. We weren't on the same floor as the SEN department, but we were in the same building, and it used to be quite handy. I'd say to a parent, "Would you like me to go down and check what's happening?" And they go, "Oh yes, please do." And I'd trundle down the stairs, and I'd face a special needs officer. "I've just been talking to Mrs. So-and-so, and it worked. I used to get things done." Sadly, we're not part of Hampshire anymore. We're not in the same building, and they ignore me just as much as they ignore you. And it's very frustrating for everybody. But yeah, that's the way of the world. Okay, just to summarise then, it's a legal process and the local authority have to follow it. They have to do it. It's your opportunity to make some changes. And I guess what I was saying a bit earlier, if things aren't working out and you want to make changes, call an early annual review. Okay. The process is evidence-based. So your reports, the teacher's reports, NEOT or speech and language report, educational psychology report, they all form part of that review. And if you disagree with the decision that they've made, you have the right of appeal. And we've just got there, seek advice from SENDIASS or other organisations or disability-specific organisations. So sometimes if your child has got visual impairment, the organisation that covers that area will sort of help you. But we are a good first point of call, and we can sort of help you and talk to you about the appeal and everything. Okay. I think that's it. I think my last page is just some statutory guidance. So as I say, there's the Code of Practice, there's the regulations, and the Children and Families Act. Okay.
That's wonderful, Sue. Thank you. We've got 10 minutes until the end of the workshop, and given that we're quite a perfectly formed smaller group, I wanted to ask you, Sue, whether you were happy to sort of open the floor to any supplementary questions rather than me doing chat.
Yeah.
What we would ask, obviously, those that have attended our sessions before, we try and keep it contained to sort of high-level questions. Sue and the wonderful team at SENDIASS are happy to help people with individual cases. So if there are any kind of supplementary questions about the slides, about annual reviews, or generically, I know one of the parents was saying, "Oh, I need to ask something about the healthcare NHS aspect," and they haven't put a question, so I'm giving that opportunity for them to do that. So is that okay, Sue?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So if anyone wants to ask a question, they want to raise their hand, Sue will be able to help. Oh, it's quiet.
I've stunned them all. I'm stunned.
Yeah, we're just a bit annual review.
Okay. What I will say is, if you do contact SENDIASS, we operate a triage system. So that means there is somebody on the end of the phone. And if it goes to voicemail, it's because that person's already on the phone to somebody else. So we aim to get all our voicemails dealt with very quickly, and we will get back to you. And wherever possible, we try to resolve whatever issue it is.